Welcome. I'm about to tell you my favorite story about my daughter Chloe that I've been telling for many, many years to all our clients when introducing the Kanban method. It's simple and effective in making sure that the basics about the Kanban method are understood very clearly. So, here we go. When my daughter was 6, I used to pick her up on Fridays, and she would spend the weekend with me. We would do things together, and then on Sunday, her mom would pick her back up. Often, she would come in and say, "Hey, honey, what'd you do this weekend?" And my wonderful daughter Chloe would say, "Nothing." And I was like, "That's it. Next weekend, Kanban board in the kitchen. We will list the goals for the weekend. We will flow them on the board, and whatever's in the done column is the answer to mommy. Are we clear?" Like I said, true story. So let me illustrate it with a Kanban board so you get to understand the basics of this method. So in order to illustrate this, I'm using Kanban Zone as an electronic version of a Kanban board so that I can show you exactly what happened during our first weekend. We listed 3 cards because that was the 3 things that Chloe wanted to accomplish on her first weekend. She wanted to go to the movies, get some ice cream, and feed the ducks. So we listed these on Friday, and on Saturday morning, when we woke up, we looked at the board, and Chloe decided, let's go to the movies. Perfect. So it was clear we're going to the movies, and as we go to the movies, we got lucky, and there was an ice cream shop, so we were able to bring the ice cream card. Now, here's what happened. We completed the movie. On our way home, we actually moved the card to done, and because of the extra surprise of the ice cream, we were able to complete 2 cards on the first day. Sunday rolls around, and my daughter and I wake up, and we could have done anything we wanted, but we had planned to do the ducks. So we looked at our board, and we decided to go feed the ducks. On our way back home, when we got back to the house, we moved the card to done, and this is what happened on the first weekend. And therefore, when mommy came home and asked, "What did you do this weekend?" it was right there. And this is the beauty of a visual management system, is you can literally visualize exactly what you intend to do, and then you flow it and know exactly what's going on. And when someone asks you for a status update or a report, you can just tell them exactly what got completed in the done column. So this worked great. We kept on going a few weeks. And then my wonderful daughter Chloe, decided to go a little bit crazy on me, and she thought the board was magical. Could you imagine the power I gave my daughter by saying, "Hey, every weekend you can write whatever you want, and we're just going to make it happen 2 days later"? She went berserk. So what did she do? She tried to go to Disneyland every weekend and do a whole bunch of activity, and all at the same time, because she was like, "Daddy, this is wonderful. I can do everything I want." And this is where we had to introduce a few Kanban concepts. The first one, we need to set WIP limits. Now, WIP limits is a concept where you decide what is the maximum amount of cards you should be working at the same time. Now, WIP limits are work in progress limits, and that's usually on an in progress column. So I'm putting it on this doing column, and I'm setting it to 2 cards. I think 2 should be the maximum for a team of 2 people, each of them maybe handling 1 card at the same time. So, first problem, we can't do all these cards at once, so we had to move some stuff back. So Disney went back, this went back, we're going to move this back, and we're down to 2 cards. Now, there was another situation that read Disney card. Here's the problem. That is a big card. So we could have broken it down to be more accessible for us to accomplish in a 2-day format, but this one was actually way too big. It was something that couldn't get done in 2 days, and therefore we had to approach it differently, and I cut a deal with her. I told her that it's a once-a-year activity. And so we decided to treat it separately and once a year go to Disneyland. Now be aware that when you cut a deal with a 6-year-old or an executive, it means that you've made a promise, and that promise better be kept. So Disneyland was not something that we did on our board on the weekend. We moved it out, but guess what? After cutting this deal, we went to Disneyland every single year. And that's what happens when you cut some deals. So first thing, we started to improve our board by introducing the concept of maximum limits so that we would get caught if we tried to do a little bit too much. Next, well, my daughter grew up and we kept on using this system, and it reached a point where, of course, the movie theater, which was one of her favorite things, kept coming up. And on one weekend, now she was much older, she decided to again go to the movie theaters. We drive up to the theater, we're right there in the parking lot, and she goes, "You know what, Daddy? I don't think it's the right theater. I think we're supposed to pick up my girlfriend. You know what? We got to go back home." And I'm like, "I agree. We need to fix our board." And the first thing we did is we improved our board. And this is how you do it. You flow some cards, you get to understanding of what works, and suddenly you realize that maybe your board could benefit from maybe adding a new column, which in this case is a column that I like to call thinking. You can call it analysis, you can call it whatever you want, but in the case of my daughter, I wanted to have a thinking column. And now I've got a new column where instead of just going to the theater, we're going to think about it first or analyze the card and then move to doing. Now, remember, my daughter was getting older, more sophisticated, more friends, projects were getting more complex, and this is why we had to add this column. Now, we also discovered that one of the easiest way to keep our promises and to know what we're doing is to add these explicit agreements. So in this column, we would add the idea of figure out all the details. And that was just a simple way to express what was expected to get done in this column before moving the card. And then in doing, it was just enjoying the activity that we wanted to do. So enjoying the activity. So we had to complete the activity before we could move it out of this column. And this is what we call these explicit agreement. It's just simple ways to explain visually again on a board what it means to flow and move cards in and out of these columns. So the next weekend, my daughter did exactly what's expected in a thinking column. She came back to me and she said, "Daddy, the movie is The Hunger Game. The friend's name is Faith. You do have to pick it up. We need $20 for the popcorn. And don't worry, her parents will drop us back to our home." And this is why you start evolving your board. You needed to improve your process by figuring out the details first and then moving to actually do something. Often this is represented as thinking before doing and committing to work once you've got all the information or most of the information to be successful in completing this card. So, as a dad who's been an agile coach for many, many years and worked with DevOps and automation, I also figured out that when my daughter turned 16, there was another thing I could have done to improve this process is to start adding some better way of enjoying these weekends. What did I do? Well, she got a car when she was 16. Why? Well, because now I could automate parts of the things she did by her driving herself around so that we could focus on other cards together. And that's the beauty of these systems is you continuously improve the way you work by talking and presenting all this information. So I've introduced three concepts. WIP limits, which prevent you or inform you at least that, hey, you probably don't want to go too much, right? Then we improved the board by adding new columns and we added explicit agreement. This is the basics of a Kanban system. It's introducing this concept, and this is where you need to be aware that not all representation of a Kanban board are the same. If you can't put WIP limits, if you can't have explicit agreements, then you don't really are using a Kanban system. And I'm telling you, the secret is limiting your work in progress. That is how you get focus. This is how you make sure that you don't sign up for too much and then have customers or executives or daughters crying because these expectations are not met. So I hope this gave you a good idea on how to use a Kanban system, how to celebrate completing work using this simple story of my daughter Chloe and how over the years we kept on improving this system. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with your Kanban board. Thank you for watching.